Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. Welcome to another fun-filled, exciting edition of the Smoky Barrel. I'm Rustin Edwards, based in hot tropical Geneva, with the illustrious co-host Mr. Matt Stanley, back from his world traveling in Dubai.
Greetings. Yes, I was. First time I travelled first time I travelled since the conflict began. I was in Singapore. Good to see many people. Um, yeah, a return to normal, or just well, I've got to travel at some point, so I might as well do it now. And it was a good trip. It was nice to catch up, and it's amazing though how many. And I'm not going to name names, of course, but there wasn't one coherent opinion around what is happening in oil markets. At one point, even the people that I met were disagreeing with themselves, rather than having a sort of company view, if you like, which was really interesting because that's the first time I've ever sort of seen such ambiguity. But also, it was quite strange talking to people about the situation I'd lived through with my family about missile alerts and all of that. I don't think a lot of people had quite understood the severity of it all and what it all meant. And it's amazing how, depending where you are in the world, how sort of deep you wanted to dive into reading those stories. So anyway, back.
Yeah, well, and we're back down below $80 crude. Crude down
Yeah,
almost $20 since the last time we recorded.
yeah,
78.90 on the ticker here this morning for August Brent.
yeah.
I think last time
Um,
we recorded was around 95.
Sixth. It was the 8th of June. I think we recorded, which was 2 weeks ago today. I think $94.25. Yeah, so we're down. We're down pretty substantially. 16, $17. I don't know. I mean, where to begin? Because it's yesterday. Well, last week there's an agreement. There's an MOU. And then yesterday, I read that Strait of Hormuz has been closed again by Iran because Israel are hitting Lebanon, and that's a breach of the ceasefire. And then what else did I read yesterday? Hang on. Israel reiterates it won't withdraw from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah chief says group will respond to any violation. And then Donald Trump came out yesterday and said that, I mean, what did he say? He said we will hit. Well, I'm just trying to find the headline.
Uh,
Um,
to
yeah, go on.
paraphrase, he basically was threatening to attack Iran if Iran doesn't get their proxies to comply with the ceasefire,
That's right.
and there would be no tolls on the Straits of Hormuz ever. The only person giving tolls would be the Americans. Blah 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 blah.
Yes, Iran must immediately stop their highly paid proxies in Lebanon from causing trouble. If they don't, we will hit Iran very hard again, just like we did last week, only harder. So, Fox News reported that Trump had gone further in an interview, saying that he had told Iranian officials if they close the strait, you won't have a country. Okay, I mean, I'm reading that, but then, and I'm like, oh God, like, and I'm thinking to myself, what does the market do? Does the market wake up and go,
Well,
things sort of
in coupled with the noise from Donald Trump, I'm going to call it noise. You still had the discussions carrying on in Lake Lucerne at Birkenstock between the
yeah,
Iranian delegation and the U.S. delegation. They did come up with a roadmap to implement the MOU, and discussions are continuing today and potentially for the rest of the week. So, I think there's a case where okay, Donald Trump may say something, but I think the market has to get a bit more immune to when he just tweets versus action.
well, this is it. Has the market grown fatigued of the worst case scenario and what Donald Trump says? And is it concentrating more now on what it certainly looks like things are going to get sorted out? And oh shit, second half of the year, there's going to be way too much oil around.
Yeah, I think that's what the market has to look at because Donald Trump may tweet what he wants. He does have the midterm elections coming up in the United States, and the odds-on chance that he will lose his party will lose control of the U.S. Congress, which will make it vastly more difficult for him to implement any of his policies or anything that he wants to do. Um, And therefore, there's a slight time window here for him to bolster up support in the United States. So he can't afford to have oil prices at $110 a barrel. He needs them as low as possible. So he and his members of his Department of Energy are going to keep talking the markets lower as
Yeah.
best they can. I mean, we heard statements over the weekend from the Energy Secretary saying that, oh, there are just as many ships now going through Hormuz as there was prior to the war, which
Okay.
is a laughable statement.
Well, look, I just because I'm fortunate that I'm in the position I am, working at Kepler, where I can kind of disagree with that, just because we've got some data points. This is our Strait of Hormuz crossing dashboard, which lists every vessel that has crossed the strait since the 28th of February when the conflict began. So 78 vessels crossed the Strait of Hormuz, 21 entered, so coming in from Fujairah, and then 57 exited. Obviously, that number flips and flops, etc. Yeah. I don't see a great deal of these charts, of these bars, sorry, after that are back to normal traffic.
No, and I don't think we will see that because there's still a lot of question marks about the safety and the ability of the ships to transit through without having any issues. I mean, you still have an idea. There's still an issue of mines. I mean, where are there mines? How many mines are there? Are they going to be actively cleaned up? And that's going to take time. I mean, you're really
Yeah,
talking a 30 to 60 day window before mines can be declared clear from the area once mine clearing assets get into the region. So
well,
you have
look,
that. You have the other issue of ships themselves that have been sitting inside the Persian Gulf, where they've got, they're going to try to get their holes cleaned because they probably have a lot of barnacle growth after sitting there for 90 days, 120 days.
yeah,
And, there was an article I saw posted about on LinkedIn about companies looking for divers to go and help clean the holes of these ships.
I'm sure
Because
they
once
will.
you have growth on a hole, your fuel efficiency drops massively.
Okay, so this is the marine traffic map. Just on that, so what we've seen is obviously we've got this Strait of Hormuz crossing here. It's still a little ambiguous. So here is the traffic separation scheme. We've covered this when the conflict first started. So
Right.
this is the normal IMO route for how ships should cross. Entering the Middle East Gulf, this is the route that you
Exiting.
take. And coming out of this, coming out of the strait is this way. This way is the Iranian route, right? That's how the things are. This is data points. This is not me speculating or getting into trouble.
And the one thing that the Iranians have done is they've shifted their traffic lanes where they're no longer inbound in between Kishim and Larak Island.
Right. So up here.
Yeah, so now they have an inbound outbound lane that basically runs through Iranian waters, but it's south of Larak Island.
Okay. This is Larak Island, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So there you go. So usually it goes through here. This is
It was
Keshem. This is
going,
Larak.
so during the conflict, the inbound lane was between Larak and Kishim Island.
Here. Yeah. Keshem, Larak.
But
Okay.
now
Yeah.
that they've adjusted it to be south of Larak Island.
Right. Okay. So that's the Iranian route. Then we've got what's called the IMO route. If I just look this one here, the bitumen style, that went through the IMO route. This is the IMO route. And then you've got everything else, dark, unknown route, which is essentially Musandam, which is Omani territory here.
Yeah.
That is vessels going dark, switching off transmission, hugging the coast here, ending up in just off Sohar, which is down here, and then turning them back on, right? That's how things seem to be going. Look, for me, an unencumbered right of passage for a ship owner, anyone in maritime, crossing the Strait of Hormuz needs to just be how it was before. But it
Well,
looks like
and that
it's not
falls under the
coherent.
international law of the seas. I mean, that is part of the UN Charter, UNCLOS, I think it's 76. Don't quote me on the
I'm not
number,
going to argue with you.
but
I'm
it's
not going to argue
basically
with you.
there is a UN agreed to treaty about the unencumbered transit of vessels through international waterways.
Okay, so when we're talking about this MOU, why flat prices come off, the market's priced out the worst of things. You can see how vessels are now transiting. The MOU, which is essentially, to me, without being negative, a 60-day extension of the ceasefire,
That's
right?
all it is.
Right. So when you're talking about because the biggest thing is, if we really boil it down, it is Iran won't have a nuclear weapon, and Iran allow ships to flow through the Strait of Hormuz again, right? And then there's they're gonna get money to rebuild the country and whatever it might be, all of those things. But the two key ones are the nuclear issue, lifting of sanctions by the US to allow the oil to flow freely again, and then the Strait of Hormuz being reopened. Now, I'm in danger of really sounding negative, and I'm not. I promise. I am quite a positive bloke. But I said this on my commentary this morning. Is closing up. I said the real question for the market now is not whether Hormuz can reopen, but whether it has just become a lever that can be pulled if and whenever regional tensions flare up again. Owners, insurers, crews, husbandry services, agents, inspection companies, they need the confidence that things are back to normal. But clearly, unless they go back to how things were, the IMO traffic separation scheme going through the Strait of Hormuz, it's not going to get there, is it?
Well, that's the big question mark because you have, Iran created this new entity, the Persian Gulf Straits Authority, and they are assessing that they have attesting that they have sovereignty and control over all vessel transits between what they are considering the Straits of Hormuz, which is an extended period, not just the Straits itself, but it also encompasses some of the Gulf of Oman and some of the Persian Gulf itself. And if you read the documents that the Persian Gulf Straits authorities put out saying that they're going to require vessels have insurance, which can only be purchased from the Iranian government to safely transit the Straits of Hormuz.
Okay.
So it has become that there's going to be no toll, but you're going to have to buy insurance from their government in order
Which
to
at the moment is
allow.
free.
Yeah, there's no toll. It's not a toll. It's just you have to be compliant under their safety regulations, which their safety regulations specify. You must buy insurance from our insurance provider in order to safely transit the Straits of Hormuz. So this is not supposed to be implemented until after. Currently, if you abide by the Persian Gulf Straits Authority, they give you the insurance free for the next 60 days. After 60 days, they reserve the right to start charging you for that insurance. And that's only good for a one-way ticket, not for a round trip.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So
Which
yeah, go on.
it basically has turned the Straits of Hormuz into the largest protection racket in the world at the moment.
Yeah, here's the thing is that I think now the way that markets have looked at this is okay, worse is off the table. They're getting around the table. There will be an agreement through one war or another, and I think JD Vance is on his way to
He's already here in Switzerland.
He's there in Switzerland. Okay. So we should really hear US diplomat says good progress on Hormuz in Iran talks. That's Axios. And then there is progress. But it just seems like, as always, you can get 98% of things done. Relatively straightforward. It's the last 2%. So let's say, for example, this is sorted, okay, sanctions, this is going to be, I think it will be a phased kind of easing of sanctions. Maybe there'll be, okay, cargoes on the water can be discharged now. See how you behave in 30 days, 60 days, both sides. And then there'll be a gradual easing and unfrozen assets wherever they may sit globally. But when it comes to nuclear enrichment and when it comes to actual absolute sanctions relief, and then when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, I just wonder. I don't think my personal view, and Kepler have got various scenarios. We don't think that anything will happen for another month, and then it will be a gradual easing, and then there will be those more motivated than others to get oil out, Iraq, Kuwait, whatever. I don't think energy flows will ever return to normal. I don't think they'll ever go back to what they were. I think that there will be many ways that people will look to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. And I wish that I was in the pipeline industry.
I would second that desire to be a pipeline manufacturer at this moment in time. I think the one thing that people have to think about here is that when you talk about sanctions relief, there are multiple global sanction regimes on Iran. The US is not the only person who have
Yeah.
sanctioned Iran. The
Yeah.
UK has sanctions, EU has sanctions. So just because the US lifts some of the sanctions, and even in the United States, there are multiple sanction regimes. Some of them are codified in law, which would require an act of Congress to remove the sanctions. The president
Mm-hmm.
just can't lift his finger and say those sanctions are no longer valid. So there's a lot of things that have to be done to make these sanctions go away. And so
Yeah.
it's not despite what Trump might say and his policies might say, you have to get other people to agree within their government structures to release the sanctions as well in order to lift the sanctions in full.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, okay. The sanctions is one thing. I just think that's going to be I mean, the
Well,
last.
that's what I think the market's currently pricing. The market is currently trying to price if Iran gets sanctions relief, what is that going to do to the overall supply of the market? And basically, it's going to trash the crude oil market, and it's already
Yeah.
going to trash the naphtha and the fuel oil market, mainly on the high sulfur fuel oil side.
Yeah.
And
I mean, look,
so,
yeah, this is so. Here's the thing, right? Just on that, right? When talking about this MOU, the biggest thing that is this renewed Israeli attacks. If Hezbollah are still being targeted by the Israelis, and they're saying that Hezbollah are targeting them, and you've still got the proxies, Houthis, and you got obviously what's happening in Gaza as well. It, if there's an agreement between the US and Iran, is it kind of not irrelevant at all? I don't mean that because I don't understand politics well enough, really. But if Israel and Lebanon keep on going at each other, they just bring it all back. Oh, Hormuz is closed again.
well,
That's what the Iranians can do.
that's the bully pulpit that Iran has. I mean, basically, this whole misadventure in the Middle East, and that's lightly calling it a misadventure, has basically given the Iranians the bully pulpit to control Hormuz, which they've always had this threat to close Hormuz. I mean, it's always been part of the Iranian rhetoric prior to the
Yeah,
war.
yeah,
We will close Hormuz if this happens, if that happens, we will do this, we will. And that was a threat that I think everybody took seriously enough that nobody pushed the button to push it into a more concrete state of conflict. So
right.
this is the first time that since the tanker war and the Iran-Iraq war that there's been a real concerted threat of vessel safe transits through the Straits of Hormuz.
Okay, but hang on. Pre-conflict, if you'd have seen the headline yesterday that Iran had closed the Strait of Hormuz because of the Israeli attacks on Hezbollah, what would market reaction be Monday morning?
Oh, market would have moved up. I mean, market would have rallied.
Right. So markets today are off.
Well,
So
because remember on Sunday, good progress on negotiations. The straits are open.
okay, but they're not open
Well,
because
they're open in the sense that they're not openly attacking ships that are transiting through the straits.
right. Okay, so if you're Iran, they're saying, well, they're open, mate, because you can come and take out insurance through us. We're not
Yeah.
saying they're closed, but the Lloyd's floor, the biggest insurance floor in the world, is saying it's still too risky. It's going to cost you 6, 7, 8% cargo and hull insurance, whatever it may be.
And that's why you still have 600 ships sitting inside the Persian Gulf.
Right. So what moves the Joint War Committee in Lloyd's in London to say it's fine? It's not back to where it was, but we're going to look at it and say, okay, rates are going to come off a little bit. We no longer see this as a high risk zone. We'll review in 3 months and maybe bring down rates, but insurance coverage is there, but no one is lifting it because it's too expensive. So what changes? How does that switch?
Well, you've got to have a concrete agreement, I think, between the United States and Iran. And once you have a concrete agreement in 60 days, that will reopen a lot more insurance coverage.
But what if Israel is still firing on Hezbollah?
Well, that's a risk. And that's why you may not get a zero war risk. Because remember, prior to the conflict, there was still a war risk premium to go into the Persian Gulf.
Of course, but it's
So
okay.
you probably go down to a lower percentage level, but not to where it was pre-war. So I think
Yeah, I mean,
pre-war it was 25% or point 0.2, a quarter of a percent of
yeah,
hull and machinery. So you might go to a 1% hull and machinery value, maybe 2% hull and machinery value.
yeah, because it was elevated after the Bab el-Mandeb issues. So,
Yeah.
okay, I'd like to see a tracker. I've got some mates, and if you're listening, like, comment, subscribe, or just comment. Probably you know new lot, but I'd like to see a track of where what war risk premiums have looked like, what the floors look like on average over the last 5 years, because you've obviously had the Russia-Ukraine issue, you've obviously had, I mean, COVID didn't really matter to the maritime sector at all, but apart
Yeah,
from
it
ships in the wrong
did.
places. Well, apart from ships in the wrong places, yeah, but not in terms of war risk premiums, etc. So now you've got. I just wonder when we're seeing these headlines, like the energy secretary said, flows are back to normal. What is he looking at? Like
Well,
what
I
what?
don't think he's looking at anything. I think he's just spouting a political statement for the Home Office in the United States. Because, again, when you think most people don't understand energy flows, how crude oil moves from point A to point B, how gasoline gets into their gas station so they can fill up their SUV. Most people don't understand that flow, that logistics chain. And so you got to remember, we're going into the midterms in the United States. Trump needs prices to be lower. To talk
Mm,
prices lower, he's got to keep pushing this full court press about once the straits are open, prices will collapse. Oh my God, it's going to go to, below where it was before this started. The energy secretary is doing his part by telling everybody, oh yeah, ship traffic is back to normal. Don't panic. Um,
yeah.
and most people will accept that and say, oh, wow, look at that. My gas prices will drop now.
Well,
I mean,
I mean,
it's politics it's politics talking point at this point.
we're trying to see when I. So let's. When was it? Let's go on the. When was IP week? Third week of February. Oh, no, it was early this year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it was the 9th of February. Brent
Yes.
was trading at $69. So
Yes.
we're $9 higher than that now. There wasn't the what people were talking about on the 9th of Feb before all this really happened. Well, even on the 23rd of February, before there was people were pricing in that things were getting a little bit elevated in Iran. So Brent was trading at like $71.70 on the 23rd of Feb. So not far off where we are now. Everyone was talking about a glut. Everyone was talking about too much oil. I just feel like the market is so complacent that all this oil is going to start flowing. But I'm looking at stuff saying, but it's not. So
Well,
what?
you've got to remember, why didn't we see the $150 crude? Because when you had the SBR release combined with demand destruction, we had more crude oil in the market than the market knows what to do with right now. And so
Yeah,
we've seen time spreads come off. We see physical premiums being discounted in the market. We've got unsold cargoes of West African grades, North African grades. People cannot find places to park crude oil. The Chinese aren't buying 6 million barrels a day. That's a huge demand that's gone. Poof,
yes,
gone.
yeah. That is
Now,
that's the big thing that's come out of this. We'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah,
the,
sorry,
the
go on.
whole thing that, what does this do for the markets? We're going to actually probably end up in a contango crude structure probably quicker than you think.
Well,
Because
Dubai already is in contango.
well, we're not quite there on the futures, but we're there when you start looking at it from a premium DFL standpoint in different markets. Yes.
Yes.
Brute's still backwardated, WTI is still backwardated, but it's going to probably flip into contango. Why is it going
Yeah.
to flip into contango? We've got a lot of crude in the front. You know, you've got all the new production that's been coming online. You got Venezuela now at 1.5 million barrels a day. That's up almost 800,000 barrels a day from where it was pre-Maduro arrest.
Yeah.
The Russians, despite all of the attacks that the Ukrainians, they're exporting more crude oil, less products because of all the refineries that have been hit by by the Ukrainians in the last month and a half. Everybody remember, Ukraine and Russia still at war.
Yeah, I know. That's one of, like I said again, one of my mates
Um,
said, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that war." Here's the thing: we'll talk about China in a minute because we're talking about demand. This is Venezuela exports, by the way. Is that in KBD? Hang on, I'm doing KBD. 1.8 million barrels a day.
yeah.
June, January, 732. So that's a lot more oil. Now discuss what you can do with it. It's
Well,
heavier,
it's a
but
million barrels of heavy sour crude, which basically, I mean, I've always said that the best thing that's going to come out of a peace deal in Iran and what's happened in Venezuela is that it's going to put so much more pressure on Russia and the
yeah.
Russian economy because the competing barrels of crude will be there that people can buy normally. Yes, Russia's still going to find a market for its crude, but that market is going to shrink even more because there's other crudes available that are non-sanctioned and you can get open banking for where the Russian crude you can't.
Look, I mean, if you go back, let's go back. Where are we? June. Let's go back June last year. So of a million barrels a day, China imported 800,000 barrels a day of that from Venezuela. Sorry, China accounted for 80% of Venezuela exports. That's where it ended up. In June this year, it doesn't even, it's a drop in the ocean, literally 69,000 barrels a day of 1.8 million barrels a day. India are taking a lot of it. You can see that here on the market share. Look.
Mm-hmm.
Um, anyway, look, that's interesting. Here's the thing. And I'm going to kind of dine out on this story. If you're Donald Trump, right, and don't dwell on that too much. I love you, American people, but anyway, um, Venezuela sorted out. He sorted it out.
Yeah.
Iran, he's about to sort it out, right? Apparently,
Well, I mean,
does
but Iran was a problem of his own creation.
well, okay. Well, they won't get bogged down in that because that will take. We'll all get in trouble. Second half of the year, does he sort out Russia? And then
Well,
at the end of the year, does he say, "Look at me, I've sorted Venezuela, Iran, and Russia out"?
well, I think that's I've always made this statement that I think that the grand strategy is how do you get Russia to stop their attacks on Ukraine? You have to pinch them off economically. That's the only thing that works because everything else doesn't work. The only way you pinch off Russia economically is by impacting their most valuable export, which is petroleum. How do you impact their petroleum? You reduce the pool of sanctioned oil to the point where they're the only person that's sanctioned in the world. And that's what's happening. If Iran gets full sanction relief by the United States, they can go from 1.3 million barrels of exports to 3 to 4 million barrels of exports rather quickly because they still have all of their oil infrastructure intact.
Yeah,
He can export crude like no one's business and flood the market. And so if you
yeah,
take Iran, you take Iraq is probably going to have an incentive to get as much crude out as they can because of the impact that the war has had on their economy. Same with Kuwait. Then you have
yeah,
all the new West African, South American, Venezuela, yada, 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 yada. You've got more crude potentially coming into the market second half of the year than Russia can deal with. And so it will put a big negative impact on the Russian economy to have market prices go from our current value at $79 a barrel. It would not surprise me that by the end of Q3, we're back to 60, maybe even $50 crude.
yeah.
And what's the relevance of OPEC? Okay, you've got UAE has left OPEC. Now you've got a limited, smaller OPEC pool to deal with. So everybody's incentive is to produce as much crude as possible and keep things moving. The biggest problem that we're going to have faced in the second half of the year is refining.
Yeah, I agree. And
And so product cracks going to remain elevated across the board until such time that China decides, okay, let's start running our refineries harder again.
well, okay. Thanks for the segue because it's clear that the market is now pricing in a supply problem, right? And arguably that was already there. It was already been there. Summer, Europe in deficit. Europe structurally long gas oil, but long gasoline. No, which way is it? Tell me. What have they got?
Long gasoline, short diesel.
That's the one. Sorry, I should know that. It's been a long weekend.
Too much World Cup.
China, yeah, China is the elephant in the room. If there is a winner out of any of this, and this is a point I made many times last week, I think it's China. That China has such a sort of integral system around the amount of crude oil they have, that the country's well supplied. They've got, electrification, combustion engines going to start, demand is going to start dipping. How much oil does China really need?
Well, that's
Because,
what I think this whole the whole war in the Middle East has shown is how much oil does China actually really need to run its economy. And from what all the data that I've seen is that, yeah, they've had some sectors of their economy get impacted because of the high cost of energy, what have you. But the
yeah,
fact that they've done the massive amount of electrification and influx of natural gas into their logistics chains,
yeah,
there was very little impact. They could actually shut down refineries and still operate under good economic conditions. So I think a lot of people have been overestimating what is the actual real demand for China when it comes to consumption,
yeah. Look,
because China's refinery economy had been exporting a lot of product to the region.
look at this Chinese data. This is Chinese monthly imports of crude and condensate. Let's just do it total. So in May, 6.8 million barrels a day. When was the last time that that happened?
Oh,
Uh,
you got to probably have to be like 20 years ago, 15 years ago.
right, let's go to all data. So here's May lowest
No.
here,
2006, 10 years ago, 2016.
10 years ago. Now, sure, the trend has been up. There's the odd dip, COVID, forget about that. But this is pretty, I mean, where is it? June's coming in 6 million, even lower. Now, we still got another 8 days to go. But we reckon that, my colleague Vic, she wrote something about this the other day. Oh, MOU, sorry. 6.5 million barrels a day in May compared to 12.5 million barrels in December. We've only got them China importing 7 in June and 7 in July. Now, when China start buying again, I don't think there'll be this suddenly like, right, go for it, go and buy every barrel you can. I think there'll be a gradual ramp up depending on where flat price settles. It looks like 75 is the floor on Brent for now. I think it's very fragile there. I think if we went pre-conflict to 65 and $70 a barrel, I think you see a gradual resumption. But here's the thing, right? Just because I know we've got to wrap up. I think the whole world, after this energy crisis, which it was in one, still is to a certain extent, I think the whole world has become a lot more efficient. And I think that if you take airlines, for example, you had 8 flights a day from London Heathrow to Edinburgh, of which half of them were empty. So what they say is, well, actually, we can only do 4 flights a day and then they will be full. That's good for the bottom line. Going back to how people were before, which was relatively inefficient, I think has a prolonged demand erosion effect on the market. And I think that's going to soon start wearing its way down to product cracks. Once things settle, then the world has got enough product supply back in the system.
Well, demand, part of a lot of the demand for services were convenience based. Why were there 8 flights? Because, I want the convenience of being able to fly at noon, not at 8 in the morning. So now you get to a point where, okay, if you really need to make that flight, okay, yeah, I'll take the 8 in the morning flight because that's the only one available.
Yeah,
So if you're an airline, yeah, cutting your capacity down to actually meet your full demand load makes sense because you save money and also you operate a bit more efficiently. Uh,
yeah,
so I think there's a lot of that that's happened, and I think you'll also see that with car sales as they move forward. People are probably going to start looking more and more at electronic vehicles once again, EVs. And if you couple that with the changes in the battery technology, where now you're getting larger ranges on batteries.
yeah,
I mean, I'm looking at EVs to replace my current EV. I've had it for 5 years, still get about 400 kilometers on a charge. But if I can get a new one that gets me 700 kilometers on a charge, okay, happy days.
is
Um,
that would that be Chinese manufactured?
no, that's Mr. Elon Musk and his fine
Mr. Musk,
vehicle, the Tesla.
you stand a Californian. No, you're right, and I think that's the way that people will go. I think a lot of people took the train again to public transport, saving their money. Why would you go back to it? Why would the EU suddenly go back to well, we're going to be very, very conscious about our sulfur emissions and around sulfur, whatever it might be. Australia, for example, the same thing, relax some parameters. I'm not saying that the green agenda has been dismissed, but I just think that whole policy will be a lot more around energy
Well,
security
I mean,
than
it
anything
was
else.
supplanted already by the Ukraine war with Russia. So that's already started putting nails in the coffin of the green agenda. And I think this puts even more nails. I mean, it reduces its impact and its the not the impact, but the government desire to implement it quickly because it costs too much to do and it's not energy efficient. It is
Yeah,
energy inefficient, the green
yeah,
agenda. So they need to think of other ways to do it and stop putting protective tariffs that make it where, yes, China can manufacture solar panels very cheaply, but once they get to Europe, they have a huge tariff because, oh, we want to protect our European manufacturer of photocells.
right.
It's a bit of silliness. You want a green agenda, then do it economically so everybody can do it, not just do it to benefit your own industrial
Yeah,
base.
yeah, no, look, I agree. And look, just closing up because I think the second half we'll record next week and we'll wrap out next week. I think the second half of the year is going to be all about supply management. And I think people will be looking at demand reference points and thinking, how do I model that then when China don't need that much oil? Sure, they're drawing down on stocks. I get that. But real
Well,
demand, I think people want to go away on summer holiday as quickly as possible and not worry about that.
Well, I think the biggest thing that's going to sit in everybody's mind is when do these SPRs start getting refilled? Because remember, there was a massive SPR release by the IEA and by the US.
Yeah, in Japan. I mean, it did what it's supposed to do.
Yes. And so that's why we probably will see a contango structure because there'll be a far more demand in the future because the logistics of filling up an SPR is not like, okay, we released 30 million barrels, let's put in 30 million barrels tomorrow. It takes time to refill.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, mate. Good to see you. Brent hasn't moved, $79.13. So since you called it.
Yep, well,
So
keep
yeah.
your eyes on the headlines. Keep watching the World Cup. Yeah, I got to say, my favorite story so far is the strength of the African teams. It's showing that the World Cup is becoming far more democratized and no longer focused on two or three countries. Love to
I
see
agree. I agree. And I'm not even going to say anything about the World Cup because it's not, I don't know. I'm not even going to say anything about it.
it. All
All
right,
right.
well, keep safe. Click like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll speak to you all next week.
Ciao.